Before we begin, imagine this. A single father living alone on the edge of Red Valley opens his door one freezing night, only to find an exhausted Apache widow holding his daughter's hand and running from men who want her dead. What he does next will change all of their lives forever. This is not a tale of heroes or villains. It's a story of survival, mercy, and a truth so shocking it nearly tore a family apart. If you love gripping frontier stories, make sure you subscribe, share this video, and leave a comment. Now let's start this story. The wind cut across Red Valley like a blade the night Daniel Carter spotted her, a lone woman standing at the edge of his land, half-shadowed, breathing hard as if she'd been running for her life. Daniel felt his pulse spike. In these parts, strangers rarely arrived without reason, and reasons were usually bad. His hand tightened around the lantern as she stepped forward, her dark eyes locked on his, filled with something he recognized instantly, fear mixed with desperate hope. And then he noticed the small hand she was holding, his daughter's hand, Emily. Daniel nearly dropped the lantern as Emily rushed behind him, trembling. He pulled her close, heart thundering. The woman lifted both hands slowly, palms open, a silent plea. "Your daughter is unharmed," she said, her voice steady despite her ragged breath. She was near the ravine. "It's dangerous there." Daniel swallowed hard, torn between instinct and gratitude. The woman looked exhausted, her dress torn, hair tangled by wind and dust. She seemed harmless, but so did trouble right before it destroyed a man's life. He hesitated, studying her closely. She looked like she hadn't slept in days, like shadows were chasing her. Daniel felt something twist inside him. He knew that look. He'd worn it himself after his wife died, haunted, hunted, one wrong turn away from collapse. "Do you need help?" he finally asked. The woman lowered her gaze, "Just a place to rest for the night. I'll be gone before dawn." Her voice held a softness that didn't match her hardened exterior. A softness a man could trust, or regret trusting. The right thing and the dangerous thing were often the same on the frontier. Daniel glanced down at Emily, who clung to his sleeve but kept peeking at the woman with curious eyes. His late wife's voice echoed in his mind, gentle and certain. "If someone comes to your door with nothing, at least give them shelter. It might be all they've got left." Daniel exhaled. "Come in," he said. She nodded once, but he could tell she was surprised. Maybe people hadn't been kind to her lately. Maybe kindness felt like a trap now. Inside the cabin, the warmth of the fire revealed more details. She was Apache, her features, the beaded stitching on her shawl, the quiet grace in her movements all said so. Daniel motioned for her to sit. Emily hovered near her father, cautious but fascinated. The woman folded her hands tightly, as though keeping them still would keep her secrets hidden. He offered her coffee. She accepted with a silent nod, gripping the cup like it might burn away the cold inside her bones. "My name is Daniel," he said softly. She met his eyes. "Adela." The fire crackled between them, a small barrier and a fragile bond. "Where are you headed?" he asked, watching her expression carefully. Adela stared into the flames. "Somewhere safe." It wasn't an answer, and he didn't expect one. Out here, safety was a luxury few could name out loud. Emily slowly crept closer, fascination winning over fear. Adela smiled faintly, just enough to soften the sharpness of her features. It was the first sign Daniel had seen that she wasn't made entirely of scars. They ate a simple dinner, and the silence felt less heavy than he expected. When Emily grew sleepy, Daniel carried her to the small bed tucked in the corner. "You take it," he insisted when Adela tried to protest. She shook her head, but exhaustion won. She lay down gingerly, as though unused to soft things. Daniel sat in his wooden rocking chair, rifle nearby, watching the last of the fire die down. Adela's breathing steadied. But even in sleep, her brow stayed tense, her fingers curling like she was holding on to something that kept slipping away. Just before dawn, Daniel woke abruptly. A distant rumble echoed across the valley, hooves fast, angry. He moved to the window, tension snapping through his spine. 3 riders approached, armed, rough-looking, scanning the land with the sharp intent of hunters. Daniel's blood ran cold. Adela sprang awake instantly, eyes wide, breath shallow. "They found me," she whispered. Daniel turned to her. "Who? What's going on?" Adela swallowed hard, voice cracking. "I didn't kill that man." Wind howled against the cabin walls, but Daniel froze, the world narrowing to those words. She sat up quickly, panic replacing her usual calm. "They said I killed a trader. I ran because they wouldn't listen. They wanted someone to blame, someone easy. I was there when the fight broke out, but I didn't touch him." Daniel stared at her, searching her face for lies, But all he saw was terror, not the fear of being caught, fear of being falsely condemned. Footsteps and angry shouts carried from outside. One rider slammed his boot against Daniel's front door. Adela flinched violently. "Please," she whispered, "don't let them take me." Daniel's mind raced. If she was wanted for murder, the smart choice was to hand her over, but everything in him screamed that something wasn't right. So he grabbed Emily, who had stirred from the noise, and motioned for Adela to follow. They slipped out the back, through brush and tall grass, toward the old shed he rarely used. Inside, dust coated everything. Daniel hid Emily behind sacks of grain and told her to stay quiet no matter what. Adela crouched behind a stack of crates, trembling. Daniel watched through a crack as the men stormed his porch. One of them kicked open the cabin door, another cursed loudly. "She was here," the tallest barked. "I saw tracks, she's close." Daniel clenched his jaw. The deputy, a man known for cruelty and quick judgments. Emily whimpered softly. Daniel held his breath as the deputy turned toward the shed. Voices drew nearer. Boots crunched the ground. Adela touched Daniel's arm gently, shaking her head. "Don't fight them," she whispered. "They'll kill you, and they'll take your daughter. I won't be the reason for that." Her voice broke, but her resolve didn't. Daniel looked at her, hearing something he didn't expect: sacrifice. She wasn't desperate to save herself. She was desperate not to destroy the only kindness she had been offered. That's when Daniel knew whatever truth lay beneath her story, she wasn't the monster they claimed. The deputy's hand reached for the shed latch. Emily covered her ears, shaking. Adela swallowed hard, whispering a final plea. "Let me go. It's the only way to protect your family." But Daniel wasn't letting anyone decide his choices for him. Not fear, not lies. And certainly not men who hunted a woman like prey. And as the latch began to lift, Daniel stepped forward, making the split-second choice that would pull all of their lives into a storm they might never escape. Daniel pushed the shed door open before the deputy's hand could touch it, stepping out as if he had nothing to hide. His heartbeat hammered in his ears, but his expression stayed calm, steady, unshaken. Morning light spilled across the valley, revealing the deputy's scowl, the two riders behind him gripping their rifles with hungry anticipation. Daniel leaned against the doorframe casually, forcing his voice steady. "What's all this noise for at dawn? Some of us have a child trying to sleep." The deputy narrowed his eyes, scanning Daniel's face like he could read the truth written there. "We're looking for an Apache fugitive, Daniel," the deputy said, his tone oily with assumption. "Dangerous woman, killed a man in town. She was seen near your property. People saw tracks leading this way." Daniel crossed his arms. "I haven't seen anyone except my daughter." The deputy stepped closer, suspicion crawling across his face like a shadow. "Mind if we check the shed?" Daniel forced a slow exhale. "Depends. You got a warrant?" The deputy scoffed. "Out here we don't need paperwork to catch a killer." Daniel's jaw clenched. "Funny," he said quietly, "that's why innocent people end up dead." The deputy's grin faltered. One rider shifted uneasily, but the deputy lifted his chin stubbornly. "Move aside, Daniel, we're going in." Daniel stood firm, not without reason. "You want to search? Show me some proof she's dangerous." The deputy's temper cracked. He shoved Daniel hard, pushing him off the frame. Behind Daniel, Emily made a tiny noise, barely a whimper, but the deputy heard it. What was that? His eyes narrowed like a predator catching scent. Daniel's pulse spiked. "Nothing, just my girl waking up. She don't like shouting." The deputy stepped past Daniel, hand on the latch again. Inside the shed, Adela stayed perfectly still, every muscle braced, ready to run out and surrender if it meant saving Emily. She whispered a silent prayer to spirits she hoped still listened. But just as the deputy yanked the door open halfway, a voice rang out from the trail. "Wait." The deputy spun, irritated. An older man rode toward them, Sheriff Boone, the actual law of their region, firm-eyed and respected. The deputy stiffened like a guilty child. "Sheriff, didn't expect you." Boone dismounted slowly, gaze sweeping across the cabin, the riders, Daniel, and finally, the shed door. He took in the scene with practiced calculation. "Deputy Collins," he said, his voice steady but sharp, "why are you harassing this man?" Collins stammered. "Sheriff, she's here, the Apache woman, a fugitive. We tracked her to this land." Boone crossed his arms. "I saw the tracks, and they don't lead here." Collins paled. Sheriff Boone stepped toward the shed door and looked Daniel in the eye, an unspoken question. Daniel nodded once, barely, trusting the sheriff's integrity. Boone took a breath and turned to the deputy. "Stand down." "Now," Collins bristled, "with all due respect." Boone's voice rose, iron cutting through the air. I gave you an order, Collins. Stand down. The riders exchanged uneasy glances. Collins swallowed his anger and stepped back, though his glare could have set the grass ablaze. Boone approached Daniel quietly. If she's inside, he whispered, I'm not here to arrest her. New witness came forward last night, cleared her name. Trader was killed in a robbery gone wrong, but Collins doesn't want the case dropped. He wants someone to blame. Daniel felt a wave of relief wash over him. Sheriff Boone stepped aside, signaling the danger was gone. Adela slowly stepped out of the shed, her face pale with fear, her eyes glossy with exhaustion. When Boone saw her, he nodded respectfully. Adela, you're free. The men who killed the trader were caught heading toward Dry Bend. You've been declared innocent. A soft, broken breath escaped her lips. Daniel steadied her as her knees weakened. Collins spat in the dirt. This is a mistake. She's lying. Savage blood always lies. Boone spun so fast the deputy flinched. Say that again, Boone growled. Collins shrank back, but kept his bitter glare. Boone stepped close. One more step out of line, and I'll have your badge for unlawful pursuit and racial harassment. Now leave, and take your thugs with you. Humiliated, the deputy mounted his horse. His men followed reluctantly. Before riding off, Collins pointed 2 fingers at Daniel. This isn't over, Carter. You're making enemies you don't need. Daniel met his stare without flinching. Then the riders thundered away, dust swirling behind them until they vanished into the valley. Silence settled over the land like a heavy blanket. Emily ran out and threw her arms around Adela's waist, surprising both adults. You're safe now, the girl said proudly. Adela knelt, tears forming. Safe, she whispered, something she hadn't said or felt in a long, long time. Daniel looked at Sheriff Boone. Thank you, he said quietly. Boone adjusted his hat. Don't thank me, thank the truth. It always finds daylight eventually. He nodded to Adela. Stay close to people who treat you like a person, not a problem. That's rare these days. Then Boone rode off, leaving them with the rising sun. Daniel and Adela walked back toward the cabin. The front door still hung crooked from the deputy's kick. Daniel sighed. Guess I've got repairs to do. Adela reached out, touching the broken wood gently. I'm sorry, she whispered. I brought danger to your home. Daniel shook his head. You brought my daughter back from a ravine. I'd call that even. Adela smiled faintly, the first true smile he'd seen from her. It softened everything about her face. She looked like someone who had fought long battles, suffered quiet losses, and still held on to hope with trembling hands. Inside the cabin, Emily tugged Adela to sit beside her. Tell me a story, she said shyly. Adela blinked, surprised by the innocence. She glanced at Daniel, who nodded. So she told a story, an Apache tale of a bird that carried lost souls back to their path. Her voice was soft but strong, weaving magic into every word. Daniel leaned against the doorway, watching them. Adela looked like she belonged there, like she had always belonged, filling the room with something he hadn't felt since his wife died, warmth that didn't hurt. As afternoon sun painted the valley gold, Adela stood near the window, eyes distant. Daniel approached quietly. What happens now? She held her husband's small carved charm between her fingers. I don't know, she admitted. My village is gone, my people scattered, I have nothing left. Daniel hesitated, then spoke gently. You could stay here just for a while until you decide. Adela looked up, startled. You've already risked enough for me, I won't be a burden. Daniel shook his head. You helped my daughter, and my heart hasn't felt this alive in years. Adela swallowed, emotion rising in her throat. She glanced at Emily, playing happily with a wooden doll. You have a beautiful family, she whispered. Daniel's voice softened. Maybe it doesn't have to stay small. Adela's eyes widened. She turned away, overwhelmed. I don't know if I can belong anywhere anymore. Daniel stepped closer, gently lifting her chin. You survived everything meant to break you. If anyone deserves a place to rest, it's you. Her breath trembled as she met his gaze. Evening settled, warm and glowing. Emily fell asleep, curled beside Adela, trusting her completely. Daniel watched the 2 most important souls in his world resting in the same space, and something inside him shifted. He knew what his heart wanted, but he also knew healing took time. So he simply said softly, you can stay as long as you want. This home has room for all of us. Adela closed her eyes, tears finally spilling, tears not of fear, but of something she had not tasted in years.